absolutely fabulous to be here. I am actually going to save my remarks for a moment, and I want to say that it is my absolute huge pleasure to tell you that we have Chief Sharon Stinson Henry here with us to bring us greetings from the Chippewas of Rama First Nation and to give us a brief talk. And I want to ask you if you'll please welcome Chief Stinson Henry.
Anin Kanawea, and Dalganakwa Sharon Stinson Henry, Dishnakas, Chippewas of Rama, Donjaba, Chiligwach, Gobajayag. I just introduced myself as the chief of the Chippewas of Rama First Nation, and that I am from. I was born in Rama, actually I live in Aurelia, and to say thank you very much for being here this evening. So Anin, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm reading without my glasses, so bear with me. I would like to acknowledge this evening's chairperson, Martha Hall Finley, who kindly introduced herself to me. It's a pleasure to meet you. And also to say miigwech thank you to Dr. Rima Berns-McGown for inviting me to bring a welcome this evening. I'm using notes because if I get talking, I tend to go on far too long, and I know you have a full agenda this evening, so bear with me. So on behalf of my council and community, welcome to the Chippewas of Rama First Nation territory. Dr. Berns-McGown invited me to bring greetings and to speak a little bit about Rama and our relationship with the Y camp. I thought about it for a few moments, and then I said, and no disrespect intended, there really isn't a relationship with the Y camp. Other than that, we've existed side by side for many years. In fact, some of our seniors have worked at the camp, whether as custodians, housekeepers, or in the kitchen, and they're very good cooks. In fact, in my early years of leadership, I was first elected in September of 2000. We're under the Indian Act, and I'm in my 6th term, or 12th year, and running for election for a 7th term on August 31st. I wish you were voters. Perhaps I could get some support. Thank you. So, you know, in the early years of my leadership, the Y camp has quietly went up for sale. I don't know if you know that or not. That was probably around 2002, 3 or 4. And we quietly offered to buy it. Oddly, once our intention was known, it suddenly came off the market. So we thought that was a rather coincidence. Although it is a beautiful camp, as you can appreciate, it's lovely to come up here. And it is adjacent to our territory. So we wanted to acquire it and expand our land base because Rama really is only approximately 2,500 acres. We have 1,855 members, half of who live on the reserve and half live off. I'm rambling now. I better look at my notes. However, thankfully, Professor allowed me to speak about whatever I wanted to. So tonight I'm going to speak a little bit about Rama's involvement in a land claim. Before I get to that, we're known as the gathering place and have been known as the gathering place throughout our history, where great councils were held by my ancestors. Today, councils are held, meetings, conferences such as this take place on a regular basis with many, many academics, and I'm delighted and honored to be asked to address such an auspicious audience. So, you know, I thought about it a bit, and we are the gathering place and have been throughout our history. Our people were travelers. There were no boundaries back in the day, no borders. In fact, our ancestors traveled freely and over what we call Turtle Island. and what you know it as North America. So when colonists arrived to our lands, they viewed our cultural practices as undisciplined, not recognizing the spirituality of our ways and teachings, the justice of our unwritten laws, the importance of our language, clans, and families. You'll see I'm wearing a button. Have you seen this before? It represents many things to my culture. It's 4 colors: red, yellow, black, and white, the 4 colors of humanity, the 4 directions, the 4 medicines. Very significant. And so when the newcomers came to our land, it was a very harsh land, and our people, my ancestors, helped the newcomers to the land survive our very harsh environment in winters. And so, you know, we're happy to see many of you here today. Your ancestors perhaps were some of those people who arrived back in the early days. And because we did not have normal homes or structures and had to travel to get the bounty to feed our families, we also taught the newcomers to hunt and fish and gather. But you know, when our ancestors were out hunting and fishing and gathering, they'd travel for miles and miles and miles. And as it turned out, while we were away, it seemed the visitors really liked the area they had come to know. And sadly, efforts after our assistance to newcomers, we felt betrayed because our lands were taken from us. Treaties were signed which our forefathers and leaders did not understand or agree to. Why would we ever give up hunting and fishing rights? No, we wouldn't do that. And so many land and treaty claims we felt were taken away from us, and we're still fighting for today. Very recently, my First Nation, Rama First Nation, along with 3 other Chippewa nations, finally came to the final stages of a land claim. It's supposed to be one of the largest land claims in the country. It affects approximately 10,000 acres, which runs from the Narrows, the bridge you come over to come here, near Aurelia, over towards Wabashing, 10,700 acres. So back in 1836, while we were very friendly. In fact, Chief Yellowhead from my First Nation, my hereditary chief, lived in the Aurelia area. Do you know Highway 12? Our people built that road back in the early 1800s, and it is still a road today known as Highway 12, so we're very proud of that. Chief Yellowhead lived in Aurelia. He was a Mennonite, and he dedicated what is today the St. James Anglican Church to the newcomers, the ministers of the day, and it is still standing today, and there is a stone honoring Chief Yellowhead, so I'm very proud of that bit of history. And so when we were we were asked to leave what was then the Coldwater Narrows Reserve, the 10,000 acres I talk about. The Chippewas of Beausoleil First Nation went over to what is now Christian Island, and they're called the Chippewas of Beausoleil First Nation. The Chippewas of Georgina Island moved to Snake Island, and then now to the current Georgina Island in Lake Simcoe. And Chippewas of Nawash went to Copoise Bay, which is now known as Nawash. And we, Rama, Chief Yellowhead, purchased our land here. It wasn't given to us. He decided he didn't want to be shuffled off to an island, as beautiful as they were. He wanted to remain close to our original homeland. And so My ancestors were technically given or assigned the Coldwater Narrows territory. And so back in the day, it was deemed that what was signed by an ex, or dotem at the time, which is a deer, and the Deer Clan, it turned out to be a surrender document. So within a few years, the Lieutenant Governor of the day was directed to, by the Crown, to have us move into those 3 areas. We bought the one here. And now, after 25 years of research and 10 years of negotiations, as I mentioned, we're at the final stages of the land claim settlement. 10 long years of very, very challenging negotiations. It's been an education, I must tell you. The claim was accepted in September of 2001. And I was a neophyte chief at the time and never been involved in a land claim, and so it was very daunting to me to sit at the table with Canada and the head negotiator, very experienced in land claims. And what was astonishing to me was at the time that they were our negotiator, Canada's negotiator, and support staff were expecting the chiefs, the 3 chiefs and councils, just to sit back in our respective communities and be given reports from time to time. And I said, oh no, I want to be at the table. And so I'm proud to say that over 10 years, I didn't miss one meeting and got the gray hair to prove it. So we are at the final stages. All 3 communities have voted. We had a thorough consultation session on what was developed, the settlement agreement. It was the best we could negotiate it. Canada says more or less, take it or leave it. And so we're never going to get the land back. We let our people decide and took it to a referendum in each of our 4 communities. And they all decided, yes, you're right, we're never going to get the land back. And so we have all voted to settle. Now it's into Canada's hands to develop what they call an order in council to go to cabinet. We just hope that that doesn't take another 10 years, hopefully several months at the most. So the message I would like to leave with you tonight is that there are hundreds and hundreds of land claims unresolved in Canada. So as you deliberate today or this evening or over the next number of days, I hope that you will talk a bit about, as well as your discussions surrounding international challenges, because I skipped over my notes and I did notice what your topic is about. And, certainly we have our own issues in Canada here at home that I hope academics like yourself take seriously, and not that you don't. I know you're all very, very busy, and I hope you don't think that I'm just sounding like just another person or chief whining. But our peoples have suffered a lot, and so hope I don't lose my spot here. But I just want to share with you that there are the hundreds of land claims. There are land and treaty rights still being fought every day. There are the consequences of residential school crises still continues to plague our people, despite an historic apology by the Prime Minister in June of 2008. The road to reconciliation and recovery is going to be a long one. Poverty, health, and education, and major challenges in First Nation communities remain today. Media commonly portray First Nations people in unfortunate ways. Substance abuse issues, poverty and abuse, financial mismanagement, crime and imprisonment, tax exemption status. The list goes on. Canadians don't know our history, and this is what needs to change. It's up to, however, First Nations leadership, people like myself, to assist in changing that attitude, to educate Canadians on the true story. I, along with my council, therefore, have taken action to ensure that our true story, the Chippewas of this territory, is told. And we're currently working with the Province of Ontario Education Department and the Simcoe County School Board to develop curriculum which will allow our students, not just First Nations students, but all students, to learn the true story. This is just a first step in the process. When we started our negotiations on the Coldwater land claim in 2001, this was one of our goals. So all of the studies and research papers will be written into, in some way, to create books and curriculum that will set the record straight. There's also a movement to accomplish this in all First Nations across the country, whether at tribal level, community level, or the AFN. The AFN, Assembly of First Nations, had an annual general meeting in July. I attended that meeting and spoke about the need to get their curriculum updated so that it does get the record straight. And so until Canadians have a chance to really understand what First Nations have experienced, they never truly will understand what it is that First Nations are fighting for on a day-to-day basis and why. I was invited to sit as a board member on the National Aboriginal Economic Development Board, and I found that fascinating. I was just renewed for another 3-year term, but we were asked to be a case study on the barriers to economic development imposed by the Indian Act. And so that's a really great opportunity to work with others and Canada in a good way to resolve some of those issues. And one of the things I said was the 3 case studies they did were 3 successful First Nations. Oh, not going on too long, Doctor. Okay, just a couple more minutes. But the 3 First Nations that they chose to do the case studies were Rama First Nation. As you know, we're quite successful here and very accountable to our people, by the way. I could go on and on about accountability, but and the other 2 were Member 2 in Nova Scotia, very successful, and Soyuz in British Columbia. And as we were deliberating and discussing our presentation to the Standing Committee on Aboriginal Affairs, I said one thing is missing at this table, and that is a leadership from communities like Attawapiskat. Why are they not here? What are their issues? And so they realized that that was a missing component, I'm pleased to say, and so we have had presenters from that community and several others who have challenges that Rama doesn't have. Our proximity to highways, so that we have the big economic engine up the road. By the way, I hope you visit there, take some money, contribute to the economics of Rama. It is a beautiful place to go. I don't want to embarrass anybody, but if you haven't gone, I would encourage you to go, and especially close to the hour. There is an 8-minute video in what they call the rotunda area. You can see it from the road. It's a big cone-shaped dome. And that's in the entrance between the hotel and the casino itself. And it just speaks a little bit to our history. It's 8.5 minutes, and it's very, very powerful. And so with that, again, it's up to all of us to educate Canadians so that First Nations people can take their rightful place in our own country. And I hope that this discourse will be a cog in the wheel that sets in motion the change in attitudes towards the First Peoples of this great land. Chimiigwech, thank you.
It is so very excellent to be here. Welcome to the 81st Annual Couchiching Summer Conference on the Arab Spring and the opportunities and implications it holds for Canada. And I think you're going to find as well that there are a lot of parallels with what we were just hearing and some really interesting lessons to to be learned. So much has gone into putting this conference together. So much thinking, planning, talking, researching, energy, so many emails. I will introduce our wonderful keynote speaker very soon, but I want first to frame our discussions here over the next 4 days. And even before that, some heartfelt thank yous. Thank you first and foremost to our extraordinary roster of speakers, many of whom have come a very long way, some at very short notice. We are very grateful to all of you for contributing your thoughts, your expertise, and your passion to what I know is going to be an exciting and groundbreaking conference. Thank you as well to the many people who have worked so very hard to make this happen, to the experts who helped us brainstorm way back in September, to Martha Hall Findlay and the dedicated members of Couchiching's program committee, to Sharon and her team who have been working flat out to make sure that everyone's logistical needs are met and comforts are at hand. I want especially to thank a few people for their advice and help who were particularly instrumental in ensuring that we knew what we were doing, not least when health concerns, visa issues, and fast-moving events on the ground claimed speakers at the last minute and forced us to adjust course. Karen Hamilton, Gus Constantinou, Omar Abdelhadi, Jens Hansen, thank you for your guidance. We count ourselves, and I count myself, extremely lucky to have been able to turn to you. To our funders, thank you, thank you, thank you. Couchiching is a charitable, volunteer-run organization. We fundraise furiously all year to be able to bring fantastic speakers from faraway places to the lake, but also to subsidize the cost of the conference so as to make it as affordable as possible for our delegates, and in addition, to bring students, young professionals, and other people to the lake who would not otherwise be able to afford to come. There is, in fact, an unprecedented number of young people here today, and I want to thank the following funders: Scotiabank, CIBC, TD, Royal Bank, the Bank of Montreal, Enbridge, the Canadian Association of Income Funds, CGI, D&H, Blake's, Earnscliffe, National, Gowlings, AMIA, the Government of Canada, the Aurea Foundation, the Burton Charitable Foundation, the Jackman Foundation, and the Muttart Foundation. Thank you, too, to our media sponsors, the Walrus and the LRC, and to Henry of Pelham and the YMCA. But I am most grateful to all of you for being here, for having set aside the time to come, and for trusting our curating a complex series of conversations on a complex series of issues. This conference is a quintessential Couchiching affair. It was originally the brainchild of Eric Koch, and the conference proposal that was accepted a year ago by the board of directors was a collaboration between Eric, Koch, and Salim Rashid. A good many of you know Eric. Some of you have yet to meet him. Eric, where are you? Wave. There you go. There's Eric. Eric is on the eve of his 94th birthday. He was born in Germany in 1919, and Eric was a refugee from the Nazis when the English interned him because they couldn't tell the difference between Nazi spies and Jewish refugees. In 1940, he was shipped to Canada, where the Canadians interned him again as an enemy alien. He likes to say that that is where Couchiching began for him. That is where he learned the value of real, open, honest discussion in a prison camp with guns and sharp-tongued guards. It is something that he carried forward into his long career with the CBC, and it is something that he has brought into his many, many years with the Institute. Eric has always said the one crime when you're putting together a conference is to be boring. And Eric has always said that the very things that are hard to talk about are the very things that cry out to be discussed, that absolutely must be discussed. No one seems to remember when he joined the Couchiching board, including Eric. The date, as he says, is lost in the mists of time. But it is safe to say that he is the Institute's oldest board member. And what is completely lovely is that the person with whom Eric developed the proposal is the Institute's youngest, a newcomer to Canada, a young man named Salim Rashid. Salim had not been in the country for more than a year when he found his way to Couchiching and was smitten with everything the Institute embodies. He came to us from Lebanon by way of Oxford. Yeah, he's smart. And he has a few other things in common with Eric. He too has lived through a war, and he too values dialogue and conversation as critical tools that help societies to right wrongs and prevent armed conflict and to pry away layers of faulty understandings and problematic assumptions. And so, it is a quintessentially Couchiching collaboration between old and young, established Canadian and newcomer, Jew and Arab that we now invite you to join. Almost 35 years after Edward Said published Orientalism in 1978, many in the West have continued to mischaracterize and misrepresent the Arab world, to see it as not us, as incontrovertibly outside the family, on the other side of some imagined, constructed divide. Orientalism is a process that fixes the East as the site of the unknowable and dangerous other, and it is not only academics who have engaged in that process. What we have this weekend is an opportunity to engage in a different kind of process altogether, an opportunity to understand, to question, to learn, to discuss. Over time, it seems to me that imagined constructed divide between East and West will appear increasingly nonsensical as peoples move across borders and stay deeply connected to the places they come from, as well as the new places in which they put down roots, as the meaning of home shifts and even transcends physical place. And it seems to me to be critical that we learn to see more clearly and that we speak openly. Only from knowledge and conversation can come understanding, and from understanding, thoughtful action. But conversation about controversial issues is not easy. We don't all agree, of course, and the conference is going to touch on some impassioning subjects. Some of us have had experience in speaking across difference of perspective, difference of background, but some of us sometimes struggle with how to raise and discuss sensitive issues with people who are likely to disagree with us or whose backgrounds are very different from our own. The conference program includes a set of safe space guidelines, 7 ideas that you may want to bear in mind when you broach a prickly topic in conversation. Treat your interlocutor with respect. Assume that they too are approaching the conversation with good intent. Challenge ideas and not the individuals who hold them. Make I statements. Understand that your perspective comes from your particular set of experiences and that someone with different experiences may have come to different conclusions. Think about what privileges you hold and how these affect your perspective and your approach. And watch for what people who think about this stuff a lot call microaggressions. So that is commonplace words or actions that can subtly demean or invalidate another's perspective or identity. Berns-McGown will run a workshop on safe spaces on Friday afternoon, and we invite you to participate to discuss these and further issues. But not everybody is going to attend the workshop. There's so much else to do. Impromptu discussion groups, which I'll talk about a little bit later, watching Lily Paquette's wonderful film on Egypt, or just going for a walk or canoe ride. It's going to stop raining, I promise.